Phil Gooch.
My name's Phil Gooch and I'm the founder of Scholarcy. We're an EdTech startup.
AI. Artificial intelligence.
The world's gone a little bit mad. AI is now in everyone's face. You're an expert in natural language processing and then you built a business.
Yeah. ChatGPT could build a platform that competes directly with us. I guess they could. And TikTok videos about us without us knowing that we're getting millions of views. People saying you've got to try this amazing tool. And it wasn't until we got a bit of investment from a company called Cactus Communications in India in 2019 that people were quite suspicious of things like machine learning and AI, and they think, well, how can we trust this thing? You know, is it cheating? Is it doing my work for me? If it's showing me the key facts, what motivation is there for me to read the whole thing?
You had a problem, you were going through something, and you realized that a lot of people were going through the same thing.
I really felt I had to do that.
As a founder of an AI product, are you scared of AI?
Hello and welcome back to Rocket Pod. On today's show, we're joined by Phil Gooch.
Phil is an entrepreneur and co-founder of Scholarcy, an AI-based article summarization and knowledge extraction tool.
I think this is really relevant for those students out there studying PhDs or master's degrees that want to efficiently learn which reading materials to focus on, as his AI tool prioritizes what's important.
Welcome, Phil.
Welcome, Phil.
Thanks very much, James. Great to be here.
Welcome to Rocket Pod. Nice to have you here. So we're all fired up on double espresso, and I'm still working on my Americano.
Yeah, got my chai.
Xander's got the healthy options, a caffeine-free chai latte.
Oh, very
Yes,
good.
yeah. Thanks for being here, Phil. We're really excited. We're really excited to talk about what you're doing. So if you could tell us a little bit who you are and what are you doing now?
Okay, great. So my name's Phil Gooch and I'm the founder of Scholarcy. We're an EdTech startup and our software is used by students and researchers around the world. What it does is it breaks research papers down and academic content into these interactive flashcards. And it makes the content a bit more understandable, basically. We've got a team of 9 people all around the world. And it's just really good fun at the moment, really enjoying it. And
So where are they based around the world?
We've got a designer in Australia. We've got developers in Argentina. We've got one in Ukraine. We've got a few people here in the UK. And so challenging with time zones, from Australia to Argentina or Australia to here, it's a bit difficult keeping in touch with everybody.
Do you have any comments on what is the optimal time zone? Because or is there, because there's different roles people play.
Yes.
So could you talk about your experience with working with folks overseas? Anything that you've seen has worked really well building a business?
I think what's really good with the guys in Argentina is because they're a few hours behind, it means that they sort of come online in the afternoon and they can look after stuff. So say we're getting towards the evening, if there's any technical issues that happen like at night in our time, they can be around to fix it, which is really helpful. And then during the day, I've got our developer in Ukraine, so I can speak to him if I need to in the morning. He's a couple of hours ahead of us. The biggest challenge is with in Australia, because being 12 hours ahead practically. He sort of does stuff and he sends it to us sort of asynchronously on Slack, and then we read it. And then by the time we're ready to respond, he's gone to bed. So that can be quite a challenge. But the great thing is that working with motivated people is the most important thing. You've got to take people where you find them. And if you've got the right person, to be honest, it doesn't matter where they are in the world, because they're going to be motivated to do and be part of the team. And that's what we found, to be honest. I'd rather have somebody on the other side of the world who's going to be on the ball and doing stuff with us than somebody maybe who's next door but not really fully engaged. So
interesting.
Was that a planned thing, or did it just happen naturally for you to?
It wasn't planned. No, it was kind of accidental, like a lot of things. So with our chief technology officer Bruno, he's in Argentina, but he used to live in London, and I worked with him previously in another company. And when he moved back there, we stayed in touch, and then I said, look, I really need you on board. Do you want to join us? And he did, and then he built a team out there.
Right. Okay.
With John, our designer, and he's also going to be our head of product as well. He got in touch with us. He said, look, I love what you guys are doing, but I think it needs a bit of a refresh. And he sent us some amazing designs, and we thought, this is brilliant.
Okay.
And so we sort of took him on, and now he's full time with us.
Nice.
Now. So
Cool.
just kind of serendipitous, really.
Yeah. Just worked out.
Yeah, it's amazing how, what was his name? He made a proposal.
John,
that's kind of good. I mean, for our listeners out there,
I think that's good.
It's like if you're really compelled to do something, just do it, because what's the worst going to happen? Someone isn't going to look at it or say no. You know?
Absolutely. In fact, funnily enough, that's how I started out. When I first started doing technology, I was building websites, and I got in touch with this music group that I really admired, and I said, "Look, your website needs a refresh. I've just done a course in web design. Here's what I've come up with. Do you like it?" And they said, "Yeah, we love it." And so I tweaked it a bit, and that became my project for this course I was doing. And then they sort of paid me, and I sort of did a bit of work for them, and that's really kind of helped me get going. So I really recommend that to people.
Yeah.
Reach out and say, "Hey, you kind of, it's not sort of doing stuff for free, but give them a little bit of something so they can see what you can do. Exactly. So this is what I've done for you. What do you think?" And sometimes it can lead to big things.
Right, exactly. Really yeah. Scholarcy. So if you want to dive in a little bit more in that, because I know a lot of people, so regardless if you're a student or if you're a working professional, it will help you. So so what was the driving factor that made you do that? What brought you to doing that?
Well, about 10 years ago I was doing a PhD, and I had loads of papers to read, and I downloaded them all and had folders full of hundreds of PDFs and other documents. And it was a real struggle to figure out, like, what do I need to read? How do I prioritize these? And just having to get through them and figure out, like, somehow extract the knowledge from them, because this stuff is quite dense, And so I kind of thought it'd be great if there was a tool that did that. But there wasn't at the time. So I kind of put that sort of on the back burner, finished my PhD, worked for various companies, but always had this idea in my head. And through the work I was doing, I was doing software development, I was doing a little bit of infrastructure, I was doing a little bit of web front end. And it got to a point back in 2018 where I thought, actually, I've got the skills now to actually build this thing that I had in my mind like a few years before. So, back to what you were saying earlier, James, about risk. I took the risk. I thought, let's give this a go. But I didn't take a massive risk because I was still working as on another job. I had a job part-time, and I was working on this as a side project, and I started building it, and it kind of just took off. I just sort of built bits and bits over weekends and evenings and stuff, and got to the point where I kind of felt confident to release it. And it kind of went down well, but it didn't have many users, and it kind of gradually took off. But it wasn't until I got my co-founder Emma on board that we really took off as a business. So it was a gradual process. It wasn't an overnight success.
So it's like the classic case of you had a problem, you were going through something, and you realized that a lot of people were going through the same thing.
Exactly.
So, cool.
And Emma's skill set, how does that differ from yours, and why did you kind of decide to bring on a co-founder in the first place?
It's a good question. Yeah, I mean, she's great at marketing and business development. That was her background. She'd worked for publishing companies. She'd launched products around the world for companies like Thomson Reuters. We'd worked together at a previous startup as well, and we kept in touch. And it just seemed like a natural fit. And we met up for coffee one afternoon. I showed her what I'd done. And she said, "Oh, this is great," because she actually needed to use it as well for her job. She was writing content pieces for some publishers, and she was having to write about recent research, and she didn't really understand some of the topics, or quite, sort of dry academic topics. So she would run papers through the software that I'd written to help her understand it so that she could then write about them. So it was a good fit for her. So it really resonated with her as well, which was great. And so, we decided, okay, we'll sort of be co-founders. And at the time, she had another job. I was still working part-time. So it was still a side project for us. But we said, we'd spend about a couple of days a week on it. And it wasn't until we got a bit of investment from a company called Cactus Communications in India in 2019 that we were able to spend, go on it full-time and actually make it our proper day job. And then it's just really sort of snowballed from there, really.
Okay. So in summary, Scholarcy will take lots of information, lots of reading papers, and consolidate it into. Does it give a study plan, or does it just provide the important bits of information that the researcher needs to know? Is that kind of high level view, and it uses machine learning or AI to actually read it and spit out something that's actually going to be useful and save you time, basically.
That's the idea. Save you time, sort of reduce that, what you call cognitive burden of having to read lots of information. The study plan thing's a great idea. It's not something we do, but I think I'll bear that in mind. What it does is you give it, say, a book chapter or a paper, and it turns it into these interactive flashcards, and it summarizes information and highlights the key points, highlights the main facts, the main takeaways. Quite often papers are maybe 20 or 30 pages long. a lot of that stuff's important, but quite often you just want to know, like, give me the top 5 bullet points that I need to know. Yeah. It does that, but it gives you everything else as well in a really handy format. So a lot of these papers are hard to read on screen. They were built for, a print medium. You're meant to print these off and read them in a journal. What we do is turn them into something that works on your mobile, it works on your tablet, it works on your desktop, and it resizes. It makes it friendlier,
easily digestible. And I'll tell you where my mind was going. So I'm a big fan of the 80-20 rule. Yeah. Pareto's law. So I'm just thinking, are some of the gold nuggets higher value than others?
Exactly.
So the study plan idea I had in my head was, could you prioritize the high value first? These are the most important, and then it's almost like trails off. Yeah. I don't know whether.
Yeah, I think there's certainly mileage in that.
Biggest bang for your buck. Cool. That's cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Was the first edition with AI, or did you do it without AI?
Yeah, we used machine learning right from the beginning.
From the very beginning.
So I dabbled a bit in machine learning in a previous job, and basically the way we used it was going through each line of the article and classifying it as to its function in the article. Really basic stuff at the beginning, like, is this thing the title? Is it the abstract? Is it the authors? Or is it like a bibliography item? And once it kind of knew the structure of the paper, then it could do stuff with it. Because you got to remember that to a machine, text is just text. It doesn't really have any structure. It doesn't really understand the concept of a heading or a section or anything else. So that's what the machine learning did, is it categorized each part of it. So we used that right from day one.
Cool.
And then there was a lot of other stuff as well. But yeah, machine learning was in there right at the beginning. But it was old school machine learning. It's not like the new stuff that we have now, which we can talk about in a bit.
Yeah, and the buzzword, I guess, you mentioned earlier, is natural language processing.
That's right, yes.
Because I've got a little bit of knowledge in that, but not a huge amount. Can you elaborate on that? Because that's kind of what it is, isn't it? Initially, right. And then how many years ago are we talking about? When did Scholarcy start? When did it inception? Because obviously the world's gone a little bit mad, and we've got AI is now in everyone's face right now. But
it changes daily, doesn't it? So we started in 2018. Well, I started initially on my own in 2018. Emma came on board mid 2018. We didn't really launch as a proper business until 2019. So 2018 was the year that we were building it, basically, and refining it. So yeah, that's like 5 years ago, and it seemed like an age ago in terms of AI, because all the stuff that's available now just wasn't available. You had to build your own tools, you had to write your own software around it, you had to label everything by hand to tell the machine what this thing was and it could learn from. In terms of the natural language processing, there was a few libraries around that helped you. So what that's all about, just for your listeners, natural language processing takes, say, a sentence or a paragraph, and it breaks it down into things like verbs, adjectives, nouns, and what their function is in the sentence. Like, is this a subclause, and how does this noun relate to this verb, and so on. And you can use that information to help you structure it. So you can use it to, first of all, identify like what's important, like what's the subject of this sentence at a really basic level. Help you to identify things like facts and things what they call entities. So at the simplest level, an entity is like a person. So like James, when James appears in the text, that's an entity. That's what we call a named entity. You're a person. Whereas a place like London is an entity as a place, and so on. So they're the really basic entities like people, places, company names, things like that. And then when you go to a more advanced level, you want to identify things like medical terms like drug names or disease names, or names of software, things like that. And then you break it down and you identify these things and you classify them. And you think, well, okay, this sentence or this paragraph talks about these drugs, and it talks about these treatments, and it shows a relationship between one and the other. So it sounds like this thing's probably important. Maybe we should bubble this up to the top and show this to people, saying, look, this sentence talks about the fact that this drug is a potential treatment for this disease. Because that might be buried on page 10 somewhere in the document. You might want to bring it up to the front. So that's how you use natural language processing to do that.
Okay, that's interesting. It's funny because I'm a big fan of, on a personal note, big fan of the one-page proposal, because a lot of proposals are just lost. They're on a desk somewhere, but it's like you can actually put all the key facts in a page. And it's a great sales tool, actually, if you can really kind of distill it. But I guess it's just taking us to a whole new level. So it sounds like you love that process, because you've got to be really committed to go through to kind of break it down. That's incredible. And actually, so obviously, how does your business model weather the obviously everything that's happened with AI in the last several months? It's just happened, doesn't it, so fast? Obviously, you're ahead of the curve because you've been doing this for over 5 years, and before that, you were doing it with natural. Your PhD was in natural language processing.
That's
or it was
right,
related.
yes,
yeah. So you're an expert in natural language processing, and then you've built a business on top of that. How does the world of AI impact your business now?
Yeah.
And do you see it as an opportunity or a threat, or how do you look at the world?
It is both, really. It's definitely more of an opportunity than a threat. I mean, the great thing now for people starting is that these tools do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. You can build tools that process text or images, and you don't need to know about the nuts and bolts about how they do it. Now, that can be a benefit if you want to get started and build a minimum viable product. But it can also be a barrier in that if you don't really understand how it works, how do you improve it? How do you customize it? But it's certainly great for getting started. We see it as a benefit because it's widened the scope of AI. Everybody knows about AI. People are on board with using it. When we first started out, people were quite suspicious of things like machine learning and AI, and they think, well, how can we trust this thing? Is it cheating? Is it doing my work for me? If it's showing me the key facts, what motivation is there for me to read the whole thing? We always say, well, look, you should read the whole thing, but if you've got 10 of these things to read, how do you know which is the one that's the most important to you? You're not really going to read all 10, are you? You're going to just read the one that's most important. So, we help you make that decision. But there was still the sort of resistance. But now AI is kind of everywhere. I think people are more open to using AI-based tools. So in that respect, it's an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also, AI has become this thing now where it's a bit like an operating system, like Windows or Mac OS. Nobody sees the fact that Windows exists or Mac OS exists or iOS as a threat. It's like a platform on which you build stuff, so it's like the web. When the web first came out, if you could build a web page, you were a rock star. If you could build a web page in HTML using Notepad or whatever, you could command, you could basically name your price. That quickly changed, and then tools became available that did it for you. But the demand for people with skills didn't go away. You still need people who can design, who can develop websites, and who can build stuff. And I see the same with AI. It's like a building block. It's like a tool that you use to build better stuff with. And I think that's great that that's around, because it certainly makes it easier. If you want to get started, if you've got an idea, there's never been a better time to get started, I don't think, in my view, because the tools are out there. A lot of them are free or cheap to use. So
that's exciting.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, you're kind of touching on it, but I want to ask you, as a founder of an AI product, are you scared of AI? You work with it every day. You see in the direction that everything's going in. Are you? Yeah.
I'm not scared of it. I think we have to be careful because what we've seen is that it can amplify the negative stuff that's already out there. So I think maybe the biggest threat with AI is the fact that it can generate lifelike videos and images, and it's hard to tell what's real from what's fake. So I think that's something we need to be careful of. In terms of misinformation, you can generate a video of someone say, hey, I saw this thing where you were saying this or you were doing this, and it could be hard to distinguish whether that was a real video or a real piece of audio or not. And I think that's where we have to be careful with AI. But all the stuff about robots taking over the world and wiping us out, I think it's not going to happen. We build this stuff, we tell it what we want it to do, and we have the off switch. So I think we're a long way from that kind of scary future that like Terminator or whatever.
And you're in a different space as well, so you're not really
well, that's true. I'm not building robots.
You're not building robots.
You're helping students.
Not yet. That's brilliant. So you touched on it earlier as far as taking risks. Obviously it was a prudent risk. You had a part-time job.
Yeah.
But it was still, you still bet on yourself, and you bet on a problem that you were having, and you built a company around it.
Yeah.
Are you a natural risk taker, or not? Can you describe a little bit about your relationship with risk? Actually, is probably a good way to put it.
Okay. Well, to be honest, I never really saw myself as a risk taker, but when I started thinking about it, I probably was actually, because I tended to change jobs a lot. And where some people would sort of stick in a job for years, sometimes I would just jack in a job without not having another job to go to, just because I had enough of it. And I think, well, I'll find another job. I never really saw that as risky. I just thought, well, that's what I want to do, So I suppose looking back, I actually did take risks, and maybe some of them were a bit foolhardy to do that. And then thinking about like the entrepreneurship side, when I was at school, I used to, I don't know if you remember, like when Dungeons and Dragons was like first big. I know it's still big, it's still massive. But when it first came out, everyone was collecting these little metal figures, and nobody knew how to paint them. And so I would paint them for people and charge them like £1 per figure. You see. So I was like selling all this stuff at school. So I was sort of naturally sort of doing stuff. But I think I went through a period of my life where I was quite risk averse. When I left university and was looking for a job, I just wanted to get a job. And I wanted to move to London, and so I, needed to pay the rent, and so I just focused on that for a few years. So I did go through a period of life in my early 20s where I was probably quite risk averse. But I suppose once I got a bit of experience behind me and a bit of confidence, then I felt able to take some risk, like changing jobs without having another one to go to, and I suppose eventually, starting my own company. But like you said, it was a qualified risk because I hedged it a bit. I still had another thing, and I did this quite late in life. So when I started Scholarcy, I was 49. So and it's never. I don't think it's ever too late to start something. But I suppose, in hindsight, I kind of wish I'd done it sooner. Really, And I would say to people, if you get the chance to do something, do it. The best advice someone's ever said to me was, I was in a bit of a rut at one point. I was in a job doing something I didn't really want to do. It's something I more felt that I ought to be doing. And this friend of mine said to me, she said, if you want to change your life, you can. And it sounds like really simple, but it was such a powerful thing because it's like, you're right. It's ultimately, it's down to me. Yeah, there's certain situations that I might not be able to change. And it's tempting to say, blame, things that if only this hadn't happened or that. But ultimately, you've got to take the decision. And it was just those simple words that really made me think, yeah, you're right, actually. Yeah.
I do have the choice. I do have the power.
Yeah.
And I guess as you kind of got older and more, you developed some skills, which obviously helps your confidence.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think that's something else that, there's a time and a place to be maybe in employment as you're kind of learning a trade. Yeah. It's not for everyone. Some people are just unemployable completely. Yeah. But there is there's a lot to be said, I think, for really kind of nurturing those skills, building those skills. You did a PhD. Yeah. So and you knew that actually, if it didn't work out, then you could probably get a job, again, because you've got quite a unique skill set. So I think that's something that it wasn't. You weren't betting the farm because you were confident in your ability to provide an income. Okay, that's interesting.
Did you? What were some of the hardest challenges that you had to go through building this thing?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, just taking what you're saying about the risk, you're right. I mean, I did have a fallback position, but I wasn't happy, and I think that's the most important thing. I really felt I had to do this.
You needed to do something.
But you're right. I mean, it was a hedge bet. But that's the reason I mention that is coming back to what the hardest thing was, because when I decided to go all in, I did put a certain amount of my own savings into it to get the software up and running, and that was the hardest bit in terms of like suddenly thinking, right, I've really committed to this now. I've got to build it, and it's got to be a success because I don't want to have to go back. I know I can go back, but I don't want to have to. And that was the hardest thing. It was like the initial days of building the technology and getting it working and getting it out there. Because to start with, it was a great idea, but it didn't actually work that way. It worked certain things, but not with other things. And people were saying, hey, I've uploaded this 1,000-page book and it doesn't work. And I'm thinking, well, what do you expect? But people expect it to work with a whole textbook. And so, I set about trying to make sure it did work with a textbook and things like that. So that, the technical challenges were big.
It's huge, I can imagine.
And just hoping, getting it to make money in the early days was hard because we had a small amount of investment from Cactus, which was really helped us, but we didn't have VC and we didn't have millions. So it wasn't like we could sit back and like give it away for free. We actually had to generate revenue from day one. Yeah. And so we had to start charging for it. And that means we had to start finding customers. And I wasn't very good at doing that. So that's where Emma came in, which was a great help. And we started pitching it to universities and to publishers and other people. And we got some clients on early on, actually. And we started off slightly differently to how we are now. So we were more of a business tool. We had publishers using our technology stack to process documents and do other things. We had a few universities using it. But gradually we saw the direct-to-consumer market is the one that was really taking off, and that's where we are now, really. But it was those early days of getting that first little bit of revenue, because I remember joking with Emma. It's like it'd been 6 months in, and I said, "How much revenue do you think we've taken?" And she said, "Oh, I don't know, about £5,000." I said, 140 quid.
Yeah.
And it was crazy.
Was that the first sale? Was that the first sale or not?
No, that was just the first few subscriptions, because back in the early days we were only charging like $3 or something, which was too low. That's the other thing actually that's hard, is pricing. Pricing is really hard, because particularly if you're marketing to consumers, and particularly to sort of students and early stage researchers, you've got to pitch it around about that sort of Netflix level, or what Netflix used to be. I know Netflix is more expensive now, isn't it? But back then it was like $7.99. So that was like, you couldn't go above that price. This is like, price of a couple of cups of coffee or something like that. So we pitched it low to get people in. But the downside of pitching it too low is that people think, it can't be very good if it's too cheap. If you pitch it too high, people won't pay for it unless they're a business. So there's a really hard sweet spot. And I think it's probably around about $10 a month, or about £7 or £8 a month at the moment. It's probably a good kind of consumer sweet spot.
I actually learned something recently about pricing, and I shared it with Zana. So it was actually a book recommended to me by a guy called Graham Hobson, who founded Photobox. He recommended me a book called Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution. Yeah. If you haven't read it, it's brilliant. Forget the author's name, but he founded Waze. So, he's a grown-up in the entrepreneurial community. And he was saying that pricing should be between 10 and 25% of the value that you're bringing, which is kind of an interesting one. Even at 10%. So, like, if you're going to be charging, £100, then you better be, bringing £1,000 of value. Or if it's £10, you've got to be bringing £100 of value. Yeah. And I think that's kind of an interesting one. So when it comes to time saving and stuff, I actually thought of another interesting application for your product. I'll share it as well. Or I can tell you offline. No. So I'm just thinking. Did you mention publishers as potential?
Yeah, we did. We did used to license our API, so this is basically our engine, and we licensed it to people. And that was a good source of revenue in the early days. Okay. But it was getting those repeat sales was quite hard. We can talk about that more, about business to business versus business to consumer. I think I'm more of a natural business to consumer type person, but other people are much better on business to business. Yeah.
No, I was just thinking that you could, if there's any like top selling books, you could run your software and actually pick out the characteristics of the book of what's made it successful, and then for publishers that are looking at all other like authors that are pitching them, you could see which of the new books have a similar kind of pattern to the top sellers.
Oh, anyway, there you go. Somebody's done that. They actually wrote a book on it. I think it was called The Bestseller Code.
Really?
And they use natural language processing to analyze. Yeah, it was a New York Times bestseller. It was great. It's definitely worth reading. They analysed the top books and found what sort of things that they had in common about. They didn't say if you follow these guidelines you will have a hit, but it was all these hits have these things.
It's like reverse engineering. What makes a good book? Okay, well that's why it's a good idea.
I recommend $1 million
idea.
It's a great read. But
okay, I'll check it out. Brilliant.
Yeah. So looking forward, ChatGPT is going crazy now. Do you feel as if you're like competing at all, or not at all, with any of the other AIs, but you feel like you're completely separate, or?
Not with ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT all the time. It's great for code. If you want to solve a coding problem, you give it some examples and it tells you how to fix it. It's really good for things like that. It's great at everything, to be honest now. But I don't see it as a competitor. I know they've added some improvements recently, so you can upload a PDF, which is similar to what we do. But no, because it's all about. It's more than just the underlying technology. It's about the product. It's about the service that you give to customers. It's about the support. It's about the user interface. It's about the whole user experience. If it was just about the fact that you could upload a document and ask questions about it, then yes, it would be a competitor. But we don't really do that. We create this whole library for you that you curate. You can search and you can export. You can import from anywhere. You can export to anywhere. Okay. Somebody could. Yeah. It's a platform, exactly. So. ChatGPT could build a platform that competes directly with us. I guess they could. But we already have a few competitors. But the market is big enough, really. There's 200 million students worldwide. Eventually, they're all going to be using tools like this. Yeah. So it's a huge market. There's plenty of scope out there for different tools that service different segments of that market.
Yeah.
So your end customer are PhD students or students?
Yeah, it's interesting
so you
actually.
sell
It's
to
quite,
consumers?
it's quite, yes, yeah.
B2C.
So that has been our focus in the last year. As I said earlier, initially we were licensing the tech to companies, and we had some success with that. But when COVID hit and everything went online, education went online, we saw this big growth and this big opportunity in the direct-to-consumer market, and that's what we put all our bets on, and it's paid off. To be honest,
That's really good. They're hard. I mean, they're very hard businesses to build too.
Oh, they are.
Yeah,
Yes,
and they can cost millions to kind of get the market share. But it sounds like you've
I don't know how it's one of these things that lots of things came together. Our SEO took off. We found that people were creating TikTok videos about us without us knowing that we're getting millions of views. People were saying you've got to try this amazing tool, like Founder, and all that stuff helps. It's like your customers doing your marketing for you is the dream, really, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. That's living the dream then. That's good. Excellent. So where are you in your growth? As far as, are you looking to take on more investment, or are you looking to what's the plan? Are you looking to exit in a few years, or are you going to keep growing this thing? What's your
we want to keep growing it. Yeah, we've got a good team. It's a really really good sort of team size. We might grow that a bit more. But yeah, it's really about growing the business, particularly in different markets. We've got a lot of demand for our services in Latin America, in Africa, and Southeast Asia. We're trying to fix the pricing in local currency to make it more affordable for some of these markets, which has been quite successul. So yeah, it's really about growing the product. We're in the fortunate position of not really needing any investment at the moment to do that. So we're kind of revenue-led growth really is what we've been doing. Yeah.
Okay, that's really what a great story. Yeah. So what's next? I guess that's a good segue. What does the next 3 to 5 years look like for you personally, and also for the business?
For the business, I think we're still, although we're growing strongly, we're still fairly niche, and I would like to see us as the go-to tool for all students. I know a lot of students use things like ChatGPT, and there's some other tools which are really popular like Quillbot. We want to be in there in that sort of top 3 tools that everybody uses. It's an essential part of the toolkit. I think where we're different is that we don't try and write your essay for you. We don't try and do things for you. What we do is we show you what we think is important, and we help you learn. It's about learning and retention. So it's much more about the reading, learning, and analysing experience than it's about the writing experience. And that's where we really want to grow that thing in terms of pushing it towards, like, we're really going to help you with your reading and understanding. We're going to save you time, but we're going to still help you learn. And we're not going to be a cheat. It's not going to be about cheating or sort of beating the system. It's actually about how can we get this information from the page into your head in the easiest way possible, and that's what we want to do, and then expand that. Really.
Yeah, it's really important, helping them, but not doing it for them.
That's an important distinction, actually. I'm pleased you shared that, because that's because there's lots of I mean, you hear it, don't you, in the news? Teachers, it's like AI, so it's like, how do you know it's? But like you said, it's about breaking it down into digestible chunks that someone can retain it and understand it. So I guess it's contextual as well as just memorizing things.
That's right. Yeah.
So any new features that you can share coming up, or teasers?
We've actually with our designer John. He's done an amazing job in redesigning the whole interface. And we're launching that soon, and it looks really great. It's so friendly. So it's a massive improvement. Really, that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. We're really excited about that. Great. Just make it really smooth, and it's going to work so seamlessly on mobile as well. So we're really excited about that. We got some more features in terms of the AI and the different levels of information it's going to give you, which is coming. So there's lots of things, and about, we really want to grow that whole thing about import from anywhere. So it could be YouTube, for example. It could be a YouTube lecture, not just text, and then export to anywhere. People use a lot of tools like Notion and EndNote and Evernote and stuff like that. So we want to be able to export to all these things as well.
Wow, I think that's going to be a game changer.
I hope so.
Being able to upload whatever and export to wherever, that's huge.
And we might start going back in, now we're doing really well in the direct to consumer, we might start looking again at the business to business side, because I think where it would really help students is if universities took out a license and said, look, we're going to pay for this. We trust this software now. We think it's good. We can see that hundreds or thousands of students in our university using it. Why don't we just buy a site license so everybody can use it, and then you don't have to pay for it? We'd like to do more on that side.
It's almost like B2B to C, isn't it?
Exactly.
Maybe another version which has a couple more feature specifically for that, perhaps
Yeah,
a little bit
perhaps,
more
yeah.
expensive, and then a student membership. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, the faculty could log in, couldn't they, and they could see who's doing what.
Well, yes, that's true. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Yeah.
I was just thinking. So, I mean, I guess our listeners don't really know much about this, but we're looking to build a community of friendly retailers, actually, within our community that is available to our listeners, whether they get compelling offers as they're part of the Rocket Pod community.
Okay.
Because we have we have a global audience. We're in 55 countries at the moment, and that's growing. You made a point about making it affordable to wherever they're from. So what we could potentially do, and again, this is like down the road. Let's just say that we get 1 million followers, or we get our community up to like big numbers. Wherever the listener is, they could maybe access your software at the local currency price.
Yes.
And we could work out some way to, like some rev share or something.
Yeah.
So we can kind of do more of Rocket Pod.
Yeah.
Because we really want to start engaging our listeners with our guests, but also support their products.
Yeah.
And as long as it fits our values, as far as, I mentioned on our coffee walk, we feel that entrepreneurs have a responsibility. Us as entrepreneurs have a responsibility to leave the world in a better place. So if we can start that, mindful consumerism, it's already started, the whole movement, but it's almost like, it's supporting the little guys, and if we can support you in that growth, as well as, getting your story out there.
I think that's really important. Building a community and helping each other is really key to everybody's success, isn't it? So that sounds good.
So is there anyone that you would want to meet for coffee? Anyone out there? If you could pick anyone, who would that be?
Oh gosh, it changes, over time.
Today,
Right now.
Today.
After this.
After this, we could.
This is not related to business at all. So there's a modernist composer that I've always admired. He's an American composer. He's very well known now. His name's Steve Reich, and his music really helped me get through a dark time in my life. And he continues. He's in his 80s now. He continues to compose. I just, something about his music that really always resonated with me and inspired me. And I'd love to meet him and chat to him about his. Not business related at all, but that's just on a personal level.
Sure.
Yeah.
And is there anyone that you would want us to interview? If we anyone that you think that Rocket Pod should have as a guest?
You're putting me on the spot.
Yeah, I am. It's fun. It's fun doing that. We can always edit it out anyway. So.
I mean, there's some other people in our sort of academic space who are doing some great work. There's Josh Nicholson at Site.ai. He's doing some great stuff. There's another Joshua Mitchum, who runs Audemic. They're doing really good stuff for students as well. I'll get back to you on that. I'll have a think. But
sure. Okay.
So on the topic of AI, looking forward. So is there anything any sort of message that you want to get out that is to do with AI, the way that the world is going in, how people are starting to use it in their everyday life? Do you think there's any disclaimers that you need to put out about it?
Well, I suppose we touched on it earlier, didn't we? I said I don't think it's a threat to world peace or anything like that, or to the human race, but I think you have to be careful of the information now that that you read online if it's AI generated. So I think if anything is AI generated, it'd probably be useful to have something on there saying this picture or this video was generated by AI, or this piece of text was, so people know what's been written by a person and what's been written by a machine. I think that would be helpful. But I think I think we're still kind of figuring out how to use this stuff. There's lots of cool tech out there, but how do we actually use it for our benefits? People are still figuring that out. Yes, you can tell it that I want to create an image of a space scene from my favorite science fiction movie, but I want to have me in the lead role, sort of thing, and it will generate that image and it will generate a video for you, and that's cool. But kind of so what, in a way? It's like how do we actually use this stuff in a way that's actually going to benefit of us?
Yeah. Well, about like when people say you need to start using AI. If you don't use AI, you're going to fall behind. What do you think about that?
There's a good question.
There is a good question. Yeah. So people say things like, AI is going to take your jobs, but I think the response to that, and other people have said this, is it's not so much AI is going to take your job, but someone who's using AI is going to have a head start on you. So if you're like a content writer or copywriter, for example, if you're using AI to help you refine stuff or overcome that blank page problem that we all have, starting from a blank sheet is really hard. Getting AI to do you a draft, which you then refine, is going to be really useful. So it's quite possible that someone using AI is going to have that edge. So eventually it's going to be like computers. It's like saying, who doesn't use a computer now? Everybody uses a computer.
Yeah.
Who doesn't really use a smartphone? Everybody has a smartphone.
It's how well you use it.
It's how well you use it for, isn't it, really? So I think it's going to be an essential part of people's toolkits, the way that everybody uses like WhatsApp, or everyone uses email or uses like a word processor, it's going to be part of that, really.
Yeah,
so I think it's going to become a natural thing that's just, one of the tools that we use really to help us do well at whatever we're doing. So.
How soon do you think it's going to become like a real thing that we're not even thinking about it? It's a part of everything.
I think we're already there. I think a lot of stuff's already doing that, isn't it? When you write an email, it auto completes for you, doesn't it? You just don't even think about it. Sometimes it's annoying because it gets it wrong, but it's kind of there. It's already there in the background. Amazon and other companies, Netflix, have been using AI for years to recommend movies that you want to watch or things that you want to buy. So that's still that, that's always been there, and that's going to continue. So it's already there, really, in a way. I just think what it can do is much more powerful in terms of visuals and text and audio and stuff that making movies maybe is going to be easier. Doing the special effects for movies, you're going to be able to put stuff together, tell it what you want it to do. It's going to create the shot for you. So maybe it lowers the barrier to people making their sort of first independent movie. It's not going to replace filmmakers or screenwriters, but it's going to be this extra tool that people are going to use to help them do stuff. Really.
Yeah, there's a whole talk about how AI just does everything better than humans, or faster and more efficient and all of that. But then I don't think AI will ever be able to do the same things that humans get, like human creativity. Like, can you replicate that? I don't know if you can.
I think Phil touched on it earlier as well. It does a lot of the heavy lifting, like gets you started, and then you refine it. So it's actually almost like rather than have to start the start line, you're just starting a bit further ahead. So I think it just makes things. I think it's not going to make jobs obsolete, but it's going to just make it easier to create value faster. I think it's almost like an accelerator, almost, isn't it? And you could apply that to anything, whether it's movies or research, or I don't know, just your marketing, whatever you can think of. It just kind of accelerates it, but it's still going to need that human intervention, that creativity, that cognitive. And I think
I mean, when you look at, say, the AI created art, I mean, from a technical perspective, it looks amazing, but it's always referred back to stuff that it's seen before.
Right.
It's not going to come out with some new style or something new. It's always going to be derivative. It's always going to be a simulation, if you like. And so if you're an artist, you could use AI tools to help you come up with a sketch or an idea that you then really take to the next level. So coming back to that thing, an artist or any creator who's using AI is going to maybe give them that edge or give them that extra bit of productivity. But it's not going to replace them. I mean, I read a lot of graphic novels, and there's loads of artists I really respect and enjoy their work. I would never read something that was created wholly by AI. It would just not be. It wouldn't be. It probably wouldn't have any sort of resonance. The art would just be a derivative. It wouldn't. It wouldn't feel like it would be by. Be like, I don't know how you would describe it, like a photocopy of something. It's not. It's not. There's no real creative input there. So it's I don't. But at the same time, it could still, that sort of thing is still a threat in terms of some people might enjoy AI created stories or AI created art, and maybe that's all they want, but I hope not.
It'd be
because that's the same with music.
Have this conversation in 5 years' time.
Exactly.
see if you have the same view. Who knows? I mean, we don't know, do we?
You'll only be reading AI books in 5 years.
You'll be thinking, how did I think like that?
I really hope not.
No. No, it's exciting. I mean, we were talking yesterday, weren't we, about the creator economy it's just like accelerating. And we're quite excited to be in this space, and even to have the privilege to share stories like this one, and it's just so exciting to we can build anything, can't we? And actually we've got the tools to do it faster and better, and and if it's good to embrace it. You can't ignore it, otherwise you will be left behind.
It's true.
So, fiction or non-fiction? So you mentioned fiction. Do you like reading fiction? Or do you have any? Do you read a lot? Do you read?
I do read.
First question.
I should probably read more than I do. I tend to read, in terms of physical books, I tend to read more non-fiction. I suppose, the usual kind of business books, startup books, all that stuff. And about, I love reading biographies of people, people who've gone on to do great things and stuff. There's a really good book called something like The Man Who Came from Space. So that's not the title, but it's about John von Neumann, who basically invented the algebra and that's used by modern computers. He basically invented the way the whole sort of design of the computer system with the central processing unit and the memory unit. He was involved in physics. He was involved in the Manhattan Project. He's not very well known the book's called something like The Man Who Came from Space. That's not the exact title.
Hero almost.
Yeah, but that's a really great read. So I love reading books like that. But in terms of fiction, I tend to be years behind everybody else in terms of reading. So, for example, I recently started reading Thomas Pynchon, who everyone was reading like in the 80s and 90s, and really enjoy his stuff. But I read a lot of graphic novels. Yeah, I love the work of guys like Sean Phillips and Ed Brubaker, who do this kind of like noirish style stuff. That's really good. But yeah, I quite wide ranging in my taste, really. Yeah, everything from like business advice to comics.
That's good. That's really nice.
Yeah. And do you have any so like your daily life? Do you have any routines?
I go in and out of routines. So I did used to have a routine. This sort of corny startup routine thing where you talk to people. So I get up at 5 a.m. and I did try that for a while actually. Do you do
your battle
I'm
ropes?
Every day. I'm in the gym at 6:30. I'm one of those.
So I did try that, cold showers and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm doing that too.
It kind of works for a little while. It's hard in the winter, but so I'm not very good at sustaining that routine. In terms, I'll dip in and out of things like that. I try to have a routine where I get up, do a bit of exercise, maybe, and go for a bike ride or something like that. That's probably the thing I try and do the most is go for a bike ride. Clear my head, and then settle down. I mean, because we're a distributed team, most of us work from home. We have an office in Holborn, which we use a couple of times a week. But quite often I'm working from my home office, which has its challenges, because you end up never stopping. You probably found this as well, didn't you? You just keep going, don't you? Which can be great.
Boundaries are hard. Well, they're important, but they're hard sometimes, especially when you've got family and other folks that need your attention. Everyone's needs a piece of you, doesn't it? Employees or business partners, family.
Absolutely. So I think routines are good, but I wouldn't, I think it's good to try different things.
Yeah, it's more focus and then rest time
But I was really into that whole Wim Hof method for a while. And it did actually work for a while, but it's kind of hard to sustain this kind of stuff.
It's hard to turn.
But I recommend doing it. I used to recommend these cold showers to my friends. So you've got to try this. It's absolutely amazing. You come out and you can feel like you can conquer the world and you feel great. Yeah. But then when it's like, -2 on a February morning and you're getting up and you think, oh man, this
I think it highlights. I mean, I'm with you on there's seasons for everything, and I think it's good to try different things. And actually, sometimes certain routines serve you. They give you what you need at that time. You don't have to do it forever, and you can learn from it. So I think the fact that you'd like to try different routines, and the fact that you have time to read. That says something about you. And obviously, you create some space for yourself. That's partly why I asked the question. Really, busy entrepreneur, got a staff. You're scaling a business. That's difficult. That's hard. Even to make the first step to get it going, and then to actually make it profitable and make it work. So I think the fact that you're obviously giving yourself time to be active and read is a good message to those folks out there that they might be in a job that they might want to change or whatever, but they might be early on in their journey, and
the first 2 years weren't like that though. It was pretty much 24 hours a day. 7 days a week. Well, not quite, but it was. Yeah, it was really
always
tough.
there. Yeah.
It was tough. It's got easier now. We've got a team. In fact, the hardest thing I find now is stepping back.
Yeah.
Because I want to be hands-on all the time and jumping in there, and it's like, no, I've hired someone to do that now. This is their job.
Yeah.
Let them do it.
Yeah.
That's quite a hard thing.
It's hard letting go, isn't it? Because they might be at 70% of what you need it, but they will be at 100%, but they've got to make the mistakes.
Absolutely.
And you've got to almost let them go through the process. Otherwise, you just, everyone has a lid, don't they? There's that book I recommended yesterday to Christian, 21 Laws of Irrefutable Leadership by John Maxwell, and he talks about, everyone has a lid and a capacity, but eventually you'll hit that lid. So some people can do more than others, but if you are able to delegate, and that can be painful as a founder because it's your baby, but actually it's going to free you, give you more time and maybe more time to focus on the critical things the business needs.
Absolutely.
That creativity that, if you don't give yourself any breathing room, then you're not going to necessarily be as sharp and make those, have those aha moments, So.
I think that's really important. Yeah, you need that space to give your mind time to come up with those ideas. I'm a big fan of sleeping on a problem. It's happened so many times. You think, look, there's no point staying up till 3 a.m. trying to fix this. I'm going to go to bed. And quite often you wake up next morning, you think, I know how to do this now. I've just figured it out. I don't know how, but
I know. I'm similar. I'll set myself a problem before I go to bed, and I'll wake up with the solution quite often. I've done that many times.
That's great. Yeah.
But you've got to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
Have you read Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker?
No,
That's one of my. I tell you what, one of the most impactful books I've read in 10 years.
Oh wow!
It's probably sick of me talking about this.
It's
so
book
good.
Recommendations
it is
today.
Yeah, it is so good, and it explains what's happening. We won't go into it now, but it's, I won't give you any spoilers.
Okay, I'll check that out. Thank you.
So I guess we're kind of coming to the end of our time. It's been delightful speaking to you and learning about your journey.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Considering in fact, thanks to Jana Starter for connecting us. Thank you, Jana.
Yeah, thanks, Jana. And Jesse as well. It was Jesse.
Oh, yeah, Jesse. Yeah.
Hi, Jesse.
I met Jesse a few weeks ago. Any bit of parting wisdom for our listeners?
Yes, I think, as I touched on earlier, I started Scholarcy quite late in life. It would have been nice to have done it at a younger age. I think if you've got an idea and you have the opportunity, do it. And getting something out there is the most important thing. It doesn't have to be complete. It doesn't have to be perfect. But get something out there. You have to be thick-skinned a bit to get feedback from people. It won't always be positive. But I think the hardest thing is starting. And once you can start and get something out there, good things can happen. And you don't always know where things are going to lead. When I first started out, I left university. I was working in a bookshop. Then I worked for publishers. I was not interested in computers at all in my early 20s. I didn't want to do that. I actually wanted to be a session guitarist. I was really into guitar, played in bands. I wanted to be a studio musician. I had a couple of gigs, not that successful anyway.
What genre, what type of music?
Here we go.
All sorts, jazz, rock, blues, funk, all sorts of stuff.
Start another hour.
You have to, if you're going to be a studio guitarist, you have to be able to cover all the stuff.
Yes,
anyway, it was stressful, to be honest. You turn up. Anyway, that's another story.
Yeah.
So I think try lots of things. I've had so many different jobs over the years in lots of different areas. And I used to work in healthcare as well. I used to work in secure mental health services, which is another story. But all your experiences over the years, doesn't matter what you do, all build up to who you eventually become. And you don't know necessarily how these are going to impact you. And then suddenly things tend to come together and you get an aha moment.
Yeah.
You think, well, look, because I did this, and this, I know how to do this. Let's try and take it in that direction. So first of all, I'd say it's never too late to start. So I was 49 when I started Scholarcy.
Amazing. It's amazing. It's a good message.
But also, if you're younger and you've got the urge and you've got the opportunity, do it as well. Yeah. Because, in many ways, it's easier when you're younger. You've got fewer responsibilities. It is harder as well because, you're moving maybe to a new city. You've got to pay rent and stuff as well. It's hard. But try and find that idea and don't lose it and keep it in mind for when you do get the chance to do it, because that's what I did. I was doing a PhD. I was at university. I couldn't build Scholarcy then, but I kept the idea in my head for 5 years later when I had the opportunity.
Okay. So you had the idea. So you wrote down
stuff
the idea.
Down. Yeah. I think keeping a notebook, I think having a physical notebook, like one of those little moleskin things, is great. Go back to them and, oh yeah, look, I've got that there. And you can. So I'd recommend that as well. Yeah, I mean, there's probably lots more, but I guess those are some of the takeaways I'd like to share.
I think that's a really powerful message.
Yes.
And how do people find you? Do you want to be found?
Yeah, you can find me. I'm on Twitter. If I'm on Twitter, I'm usually talking about cycling and stuff to do with traffic management, all sorts of anyway. But yeah, I'm on Twitter, Phil Gooch on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. So drop me an email, phil@scholarcy.com. But yeah.
Okay, and it's Gooch, Gooche, or was it?
Gooch, yes.
Without CH, okay, without the E, okay. Okay, that's Phil Gooch. Okay, brilliant.
You can Google me. But yeah, I'm on most social media things. Yeah.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming in. It's been a pleasure to
I really enjoyed it. Thanks, James.
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah, it was good fun. Thanks very much.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Rocket Pod with Phil Gooch. When you get a moment, we'd love it if you could hop over to whatever platform you're listening to Rocket Pod on and leave us a quick review. We love all your messages. It helps guide us to create more inspiring content to help you on your journey. Also, feel free to, give us some guest suggestions.
Yeah, and I think for today's guests especially, I think it was just really nice to see how someone took a problem that they had in their life and could recognize that same problem with everyone else in their space, and then just really go for it and really create something that helps solve that issue.
Yeah, and also another little key takeaway for me was, Phil had a good job, good paying job, stable, secure, but actually took that plunge. So one thing was apparent that he did hone his skills and spent all that time working with the data, and then made that leap of faith, and then pulled a really great team around him. So I think we can all learn from Phil's journey.
Definitely.
And it's never too late to start.
Yeah. Have a great week ahead. Remember to subscribe and follow if you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you in the next one.
Take care.